let's talk about this TCU team, because you can say it came out of nowhere, and yes, it did. Again, TCU is trying to become the first national champion that started the season unranked since 1990. And that's a long time. It's a totally different era of college football, completely different era of college football. The way that we view college football, recruiting rankings have become a thing. And so it's hard to even equate what's going on. I mean, to me, this is just like this is the first time we've seen this. And Sonny Dykes has done an outstanding job. But let's talk through a little bit about, like, what do we expect? Not in this game, but moving forward out of college football, because I actually think that this could become a little bit more prevalent than what we've seen in the past. Because in the past, there was one way to do this. One, recruit. You had to recruit. You had to recruit high school kids. You had to redshirt them. You had to develop some of them. Some of them had to be stars. And then eventually you had a roster that was more talented than everybody else. And what ended up happening is that the combination of that style and this 4-team invitational college football playoff ended up basically consolidating all of the talent into about 4 or 5, maybe 6 schools around the country, because they're the only ones that could make a solid argument to high school players that, like, you've got to come here in order to compete for a championship. And they weren't necessarily wrong. So the meaning was stripped out of college football. Well, now all of that is kind of changing, right? Because while we still have the 4-team invitational, now all of a sudden you can get really quality college players to come in and fill holes on rosters that maybe aren't as talented as those top 5 or 6. So what you see is drastic turnarounds across college football, by the way, not just TCU. Washington had a turnaround, mainly because of transfers, new coach. USC, huge turnaround for a similar reason. Colorado's trying to do that right now in the transfer portal. Michigan filled a huge hole on their offensive line, made a playoff run. The transfer portal is a massive deal, and it's totally changing the sport, and it's changing who can expect or hope to be in the college football playoff, and TCU is the evidence of that. When you look at this roster, the first thing that you've got to say is that Gary Patterson did an excellent job identifying talent, in particular speed. Now, it wasn't working out, okay? So it changes. Then Sonny Dykes comes in, and he identifies the very specific areas where they can go to get the help and the depth that they need to become a roster that can compete at the top end. So what do? Well, here's a few guys just for namesake. On the offensive side, a couple. Jared Wiley, the tight end, comes in from Texas. He's been their leading receiver as the tight end. Not for the team, but of the tight end group. Alon Ali comes from SMU with Sonny Dykes and is their center and anchors what is already a veteran offensive line group that was incumbent from the old coaching staff. And then all of a sudden, here they are. On the defensive side, they needed more help. They needed a lot of help from a depth perspective on the defensive line. They got 3 or 4 transfers on the defensive line to go along with Dylan Horton, who transferred in last year. They needed help at linebacker. They got Johnny Hodges from Navy. They needed help at safety. They got Mark Perry from Colorado, Josh Newton from ULM. Now all of a sudden, you become a team that, as a roster, you can compete. Well, then what do you need? You need to win close games. That's what you need. And they did that. So now I do believe that this is a point in time in college football that we're going to look back on and say, remember that TCU team? They were the first of what will become many teams that can turn it around, go sub 500, turn it around in the transfer portal, and then compete even in the playoff stage, and in particular when we move to a 12-team playoff. So this TCU team, remember this team. Because as long as we play a similar style of football and as long as these rules are what they are with a 12-team playoff coming and transfer portal, we're going to have teams that can turn it around and play at the top end. And I'm here for it. I can't wait to watch them play in the national championship game. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.